Hello, it's November 2023, and over the years, especially the past several years, I've talked about the cycles of civilization, and I've also highlighted the 100-year patterns within the cycles of civilization. And a lot of people want to dismiss it, saying, hey, it's nonsense, it's not real, whatever. A lot of people just didn't want to accept it. Perhaps it's too hard for people to accept. The patterns allowed me to, for example, and I've stated many times, as a descriptive, to predict when things would be ending. The first phase would be ending with things that have been imposed over the past several years. It's a lot of backlash from people because a lot of people think it's nonsense, don't want to accept it, whatever the reason. And I've highlighted, for example, how as a descriptive, I was able to predict when the things that have been going on for the past few years would end, the first phase of it anyway. And even when I've said that in videos that are date stamped, people don't want to accept it because they want to think, for example, their efforts is what made the change. But now we have descriptive perceived leaders of nations. For example, the President of the United States, current, talking about the patterns, the 100-year pattern. So it's not just me saying this. And I've said before how, for example, as a descriptive, elitists or people who are controlling the world, they have knowledge that the commoner does not have. And this is an example of it. They know the cycles of civilization, they know the patterns, and here you go. So maybe now people will listen and say, hey, wait a minute, there's something to this. There is something to this. We see, for example, on the world stage, things playing out. And a lot of people are buying into these things that are being played out. Because, for example, belief systems, religions talk about them. You have to remember that the people who are imposing, who are controlling everything, the people who begin and end world wars, who have generational commitment in the monopoly on violence, etc. They're very much aware of religious and belief system prophecies and everything else. And they play them out. And none are more blind than people who adhere to a belief system or religion, feeding, supporting everything that's happening. We see the world stage, how everything is just starting to speed up. We have conflicts between two countries, and we have another two countries. Now we have other countries and other countries getting dragged into it. We have all sorts of false information and everything else that's taking place. Now, I'm not stating or implying that events, more current events with a conflict, is not happening, but it is orchestrated, a self-fulfilling prophecy of sorts. And it's causing a lot of divide. And that divide is now carried through to every single country because everyone is all mixed in together. I'm not stating or implying that's a bad thing. It's just, this is where we're at now. Everything is being orchestrated. And we have reports of even false information, false video footage and all this other stuff coming out. In the meantime, there are things, catastrophic things to humanity that are taking place. You have to understand why. We not only see the world stage, but we see the domestic stage, each country having problems within. We see divisions and social justice nonsense and everything else just breaking down rapidly societies everywhere. We really notice this, though, in the Western cultures. All you can do is survive. Everything's playing out with this 100-year pattern. And again, I'm not the only one now saying it. We see, for example, the rise on false accusations. There's a recent example where a comedian, apparently a famous comedian, had something taken out of context, a comedy skit that he was doing, and he went through 5 days, according to him, hell, because another comedian decided to try to capitalize on him and create this false narrative with a video of one of his skits. But what this false accusing comedian did not realize, that this other comedian that was having his life ruined had hit the false accuser comedian in his skit all recorded as well. Apparently he was able to prove that it was all taken out of context. And the person who initiated this, who took it out of context, which is a false allegation, tried to retract everything that they said and, try to play the sympathy card of some sort of racism and everything else. But we see people being canceled for all sorts of craziness. And even the laws now are supporting all this. This is what the world has become. Put everything into context. And if he didn't have those recordings, who knows where he'd be. But we see a rise with this type of thing. And just recently, I had a conversation with a homeless person I've seen around for quite some time. And we had this conversation. And during this conversation, I took this homeless person out of their newly created comfort zone of being homeless and started to ask them who they were before. And they said to me they were a high school teacher. And there were some other things that went along with that as well. And you can see or feel actually the joy bringing back those memories. And the reason why he's no longer a teacher is because, as a descriptive, he didn't want to comply with the things that have been going on for the past 3 years. It cost him his job. He ended up, there's a whole bunch of events that came from that, and he ended up on the street, and he's been on the street for a year. And unfortunately, to cope, he got hooked on some very powerful drugs. And that's going to take him down another spiral. And I've said before, just to go off on a tangent here, people assume homeless people are there because of drugs and alcohol. Drugs and alcohol follow when somebody becomes homeless because many people can't cope. The stress and everything else and the embarrassment and everything that goes along with it. Trust me, I know. Anyone who's been following my story for years know. I just never, me personally, got into drugs and alcohol or anything. And someone actually recently told me that I'm too smart for that because in order to survive, you have to be coherent. I've been in survival mode for many, many years. But it's a sad story. We see more and more of this happening. People losing their jobs, their homes, whatever. Whether it be not complying with things that are being imposed, to economic situation that's all around the world. Prices have gone up. More and more people are finding themselves in that situation. Our standard of living today, when adjusted for inflation, people are living poorer than people during the Great Depression in the 30s. Keep that in mind. So all these things are spiraling, growing, becoming more common, impacting more people. We see today now, and I've said this before, how law has become like theoretical mathematics, neither of which having a basis in reality. We see criminals, broad daylight, robbing people, robbing cars, doing all of these crazy things, and walking away, having their cases dismissed, etc. And we see a rise of innocent people being convicted. We also see, which ties in with innocent people, because people are also being convicted based on ideologies, liberal ideologies, social justice nonsense. People getting charged and convicted for nonsense of using proper, I'm trying to wordcraft here on the fly, proper way to address someone. It's just, everything is just spinning out of control so much. And this is the world that everyone, to some degree, some more than others, have contributed to our demise. I've said for many years that injustice, tyranny overall, comes from the countless of cases that are unheard of. Countless of cases no one cares about because, hey, that's their problem. Yeah, it's bad, you know. That is the foundation. That sets the precedent. We also have precedents, for example, just to go off on a tangent, of people who want more injustice, more tyranny, more things being imposed. They're going to courts and lawsuits and winning and saying, we want more things being imposed. And I remember going back to around 2001, after that big event, the two big buildings, and people were being interviewed on the street, and people were saying in the interview that they would rather have their rights taken away for some perceived safety. And again, this ties into the cycles of civilization, weak people creating hard times. But this is the world that we can all see. Everything is happening and picking up pace so quickly. And when you look around, it's like, you know, I've highlighted the only thing that people can do. They're in between the slivers of all these groups doing and saying whatever, is survive. And then we see people pulling together thinking, oh, we have a common cause, because they're not going after the foundation. I've said this for many, many years. And when you look at everything overall, it's pretty sad. And my message has been telling people to survive. So all you can do is survive. I said in previous videos about the slivers of people in between all these other groups and everyone doing whatever. They're the ones that are the silent movement, knowing that, yeah, I just got to survive this. And I've been trying to survive. I've survived many years as people have been following my story out of my vehicle in the wilderness, minus 44, just getting through each day. My efforts and everything that took place for me in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, completely destroyed my life to the point where I can't, or have been unable to, get out of this hole. And now with my health really serious right now, makes it even harder. And I know people have commented, well, you look so healthy or whatever in videos and stuff. Well, what am I supposed to do? Sit here and be all woe is me and look like I have one foot in the grave? You can have one foot in the grave and still look healthy. And even if you don't have one foot in the grave and you're healthy, doesn't mean that your time could be any time, right? And then when my health completely went downhill, where I had that life-saving surgery, I literally almost died in June of 2022. And apparently the same thing happened in January of 2023, related, where I had the emergency surgery in June 2022 and dealing with complications and everything else, and I've been in and out of the hospital more times than I can count, having tests and everything else, and just getting bad news after bad news, not being able to afford medication that may help, but at the same time there's some serious side effects. And for people who missed it or maybe forgotten, one of my biggest issues right now is my digestive system not working mechanically. So I have to take medications to get my digestive system to work. And then I have every other organs and everything else, and all this is now compounded on the injuries that I had on May 4th, 2013 by the two former officers. It is what it is. The system, whether it's good or bad, corrupt or not, doesn't matter. You play the cards you're dealt with. And for me, I'm just really tired this past year and a half or so, in and out of hospitals and tests and bad news and more bad news and everything else. It's just a little bit much. So I guess I'm at the point where I'm just giving up on that part of my personal life. Just whatever. Can't afford to do much. But as I say to everyone else, survive. And for me, I'll survive as long as I can, as best as I can, without compromising myself. It is what it is. That's life. So it's left me in a situation. Now, about this past year, I've been blessed and thankful for the opportunity to be indoors while I'm dealing with this hospital stuff and having procedures and surgeries and everything else, and there's supposed to be a lot more going on. But I'm at the point now, I just can't afford to keep going and dealing with all this stuff. And having all the vandalism and windows smashed and everything on my vehicle now, I don't even feel safe where I'm at, or where I've been at. I really can't afford it, and trying to get some governing body to give me some assistance with regards to my health issues, based on my health issues and stuff. It's a slow process, not in time. So I'm at the point where I'm just going to give up on trying to follow up on my health, and whatever happens, happens. It is what it is. That's life. I'm not going to whine and complain about it. This is the sign of the times that we live in, and we see what's unfolding on the world stage. We see what's unfolding on the domestic stage everywhere. And we see what's happening on the personal stage with everyone's life. And I've used mine as an example to only speak for myself. The 100-year pattern, which now officials, world leaders are talking openly about. Something I've been saying for a very long time. I've even done videos about. So this is the civilization that you want to salvage. Again, why? It's terrible where we're at. All you can do is survive. All I can do is survive as long as I can. I'm not going to whine about it. Just want to really highlight these things. All I've ever wanted to do is just give people something to think about and say, hey, look, there's a couple of doors over there. Just go take a look. Open the door and take a look. There's a lot more going on in the world. And I'm not even going to be touching up on what I would call, for example, the woo-woo things happening in the world and everything else. Some might call it supernatural, whatever. Woo just seems more fitting anyway. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.
Listen to this and write it down if you can't remember it. You're never going to outgrow warfare. You simply must learn to fight. I hear people saying to me all the time, when is it going to get easier? When you die.